Well, good morning to everyone, and greetings in Christ's name. It's a privilege to have an hour, or actually almost 3 hours, set aside to worship. And Jonathan, I would definitely take help if anybody's volunteering to help me preach. I'm going to start off with a story for the children. So I'm going to invite all the children to come forward. And why don't you sit on the front bench right up here, if you don't mind. Sit right over here on the front bench. And maybe we'll need to go into the second bench as well if it's filling up here. There you go, Isaiah. Moving to the second bench. All right. So how many of you remember, or how many of you know what a camera is? All of you know what a camera is? I'm not talking about the cameras on phones, but the old ones that had a little screen on the back that you could pop out and look at things as you were recording them. You remember those cameras? Yeah, it's been a little while ago. So this story that I'm about to tell you takes place in the era of those old cameras, about 18 to 20 years ago, when I was 12, 14. So growing up, we used to have a camera like this, and it had a little screen that you could pop out, and we enjoyed taking video of all kinds of things. Younger siblings, birthday parties, family trips, etc. And this story happened on a Sunday morning, a lot like this morning. Everyone was getting ready for church, and we were supposed to leave at a certain time. And, there's the frantic kind of scurrying that everybody's doing to get ready for church. Except some of us weren't quite ready. So my brother Joseph, who was about 6 at the time, he was dressed in his white shirt, black pants, and his shoes and socks. He was ready to go, and I was in the family room with him, and I had our camera. And we like to make music videos, and so we would sing songs from our favorite groups. And he was in the middle of singing a song of kind of dancing with the song, and I was videoing this whole thing. But I didn't quite turning out. So I told him to go back, and we were using the hearth as our stage. I told him to go back and try it again, and I was going to capture this video, or this event. And so he starts walking up, gets up onto to our makeshift stage, and then I heard something behind me. What do you think it was? In the middle of the video, I heard my mother's voice. And this is what she said. She said, "Stop! You don't have time." And you know what I said? I was the quintessential guilty 14-year-old. I just said, I want to say something. And that was the end of the conversation. It's all caught on video. And I can show it to you after church. My mom was a little frustrated, and understandably so, right? Because this was time to get ready for church, and I was just messing around. I wasn't even ready for church. But what do you think she meant when she said, "Stop, you don't have time"? What do you think she meant by that statement? Anybody have any idea? What do we mean when we talk about time? What is time? Do you have time? You have time? What is time? Who made time? Who do you think made time? Is this time? Is this thing time? You're not sure? What does it do? It tells us time, right? But is this thing time itself? Not really. It just tells us what the time is. Do you think this thing is time? No? What is this thing? What does it do? Do you know, Zachary?
It times.
Yeah, it's a timer, right? It measures time. So we flip this thing over. About 10 minutes later, all the sand from the top will be on the bottom. Okay, so it's called an hourglass, or it's kind of a primitive form of a timer. So we don't really know what time is, but we know we can measure it, we can tell time. And do you think I've run out of time? Well, I think so. So I'm going to send you back to your parents. Thank you for listening. We're going to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. For our text today, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And as we've done before, I'm going to ask you to stand as I read verses 1 to 14 of Ecclesiastes 14. Ecclesiastes 3, 1 to 14. To everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it, and God doeth it, that men should fear before him. Please have a seat. We'll stop there for now. We've got this strange relationship with time. It's high time, it's playtime, it's daytime, nighttime, dinner time, summertime, bedtime, break time. Sometimes we have pastimes, down times, nap times, rag times, real time, overtime, lifetimes, anytime. You showed up on time, in the nick of time, or in no time at all, and you're timely. In the meantime, we save time, give someone a hard time, are pressed for time, ask the time, face time, tell the time, waste time, and even kill time. And sometime, time will run out, and time will tell. Hopefully, I haven't taken too much of your time already. We've got this unique relationship with time. We Christians are called, though, to live with distinctly different loves and worldviews and perspectives of life. We're called to live with a different story in mind. If that is the case, then how should a follower of Jesus think about time? How does following Jesus impact and inform the way I think about and view time? I'd like to consider 3 points this morning: a definition of time, our views of time, and then redeeming the time. Let's start off with a definition of time. Time is the top 100 most commonly, it's in the top most commonly used English words, coming in at about 55. And according to the Oxford Dictionary, time is a finite extent or stretch of continued existence, as the interval separating 2 successive events or actions, or the period during which an action, condition, or state continues. It's a finite portion. And if we go back to Genesis chapter 1, which I'll just read a few verses there, we see kind of the beginning where time enters the equation. This is verses 3 to 5 of chapter 1. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So God divides this light from the darkness. He separates the day and the night. And throughout this chapter in Genesis, we see God creating the world. We see this continuous cycle of day and night, which results in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh days. It's this kind of rhythmic pulse in the background of the universe. And then if we go on a bit farther into chapter 8, after the flood, after Noah exits the ark, he builds this altar to God before the rainbow shows up in chapter 9. And God says this to Noah after he's received the sacrifice. This is verse 22. He says, "While the earth remaineth," so as the universe continues, "seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease." The sun rises and the sun sets. We have day and night consistently all the way from the beginning of time, all the way to the end of time. But did God create time? And maybe that seems like a silly question to ask. In some ways, time has existed in nature as a result of the creation and the world being created. On the other hand, humankind has had a large part to play in the development and understanding of time and how we measure time. It's as if God began the motion of time and gave humans the sense and ability to categorize and organize the time into manageable segments. And we've done that to our benefit. And because of this, we understand that God himself is outside of time. As the creator of time, he's not limited by time. God is considered infinite or eternal, and because, by definition, time is something that is finite, God must be outside of this earthly dimension. We can read verses like 2 Peter 3:8, where Peter writes, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day." So it's the difference between one day and 1,000 years for God seems to indicate that there isn't a difference in the category of time that as God sees it. That's actually a paraphrase of Psalm 94, which says, "For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night." We could go on to Revelation, which kind of looks at the end of time. Revelation 1:8, where Jesus says, "I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty." So this gives the idea of an eternal beginning and ending God who set in motion creation, that is, and in turn time, before there was even time. And even Revelation 22:5, where it talks about there needing to be no candle because the Lord God himself giveth them light. Night or sun, both of those are non-existent in eternity because Jesus himself is the focal point. So, night and day, from which we've developed our system of time, is non-existent. So God is outside of time while humans are bound by time. God is boundless, but humans are time-bound. So I want us to understand that God has given us this framework, but he himself is not limited by this framework. We can never outrun time or its impact on our lives. From the minute we're born, we've become integrated into this time system that just continues ticking, just like this. Okay, you can't hear it. So, but we all know what a ticking clock sounds like, right? So it's these seconds that tick on, and that moment ends. The seconds stop ticking when we die. Time ends for us when we die, or maybe when we die. Time ends for us. We die, or maybe when we die, time ends for us. And in a sense, time is connected to our mortality. We're fleshly, mortal beings who depend on time for our survival. And death is the only thing that ends time for us. And we've all known parts of our lives where we wish that time would just speed up. Whether that was, going to Sunday school at 4 years old, the first day of kindergarten, our 8th birthday, that driver's license, or even moving out of the house. It just seems that impatience and waiting on time makes up a good chunk of our childhood experience. But then the seconds tick on, and eventually we have plenty of years to look back on. In fact, soon we have more years to reflect on than we have to look forward to. And that's when we say time has sped up. And of course it hasn't really. The second hands have not begun to move faster. There's still 60 minutes per hour. Maybe it's because we just move more slowly as we get older. I think what it is that our perspective has changed, and I think it's directly connected to that as we get older, we have a keener realization of our frailty and of our mortality. And that brings me to my second point. How we think about time makes a big difference. So I'd like to look at 5 different ways that we could think of time. And humans have thought about, different cultures have thought about various ways of thinking about time. And these are kind of loose categories. They're not actually philosophical per se, categories of how we think about time. And they're humanistic, fatalistic, capitalistic, Jewish, and Christian views of time. So we're going to start off with a humanistic view of time. Humanism, by definition, it emphasizes the human experience and perception as its basis for moral values and interpretation of the world. In other words, humanism disregards the divine and any deity's role in the universe. Humans have agency in the world to make it a better place. That is kind of the objective point of reality. And if you would take this idea of humanism and apply it to time, you get a very hedonistic worldview, where time is a linear progression from past to present to future, and the present reality that I'm experiencing right now is the point from which I'm making sense of the world. Therefore, what I do in the present is the most important thing, whether that's seeking pleasure or making decisions based on my present feelings. The supernatural doesn't really exist in my worldview. Present is key, past is somewhat useful to help interpret the present, and future is this blank canvas in which you can determine how far you want to go or how high, which stars you want to hit. And time is mine to use. Robert G. Ingersoll, who's an American lawyer from the mid-1800s to late 1800s, he was known as the Great Agnostic. He said this: "Why should we postpone our joy to another world? Let us get all we can of the good between the cradle and the grave, all that we can have of the truly dramatic. If, when death comes, that is the end, we have at least made the best of this life." Very kind of depressing way to view it. Or Epicurus, who was a Greek philosopher, said this in a letter: "The wise man neither rejects life nor fears death, just as he does not necessarily choose the largest amount of food, but rather the pleasantest food. So he prefers not the longest time, but the most pleasant time." His idea was that pleasure is the highest good. So what you get is a human being who is a pleasure-seeking, impulse-driven person who's seeking the fulfillment of the moment and always looking for the next best and greatest. And the logical end of this is a person who never actually completely lives in the moment because they're always a little unsatisfied with the pleasure. It's never quite fulfilling. And this leads to people living for the weekend and during the week just to get to the weekend, or always living for that next vacation instead of enjoying the one that they're actually on. And it's scientifically proven that there is a level of dopamine that's basically influencing the brain or given in the brain whenever we anticipate some pleasurable experience. So if I'm planning a trip, I get a little bit of dopamine from planning this trip. The problem is when I continue to want to go back to this dopamine hit, I can just need to keep planning trips and not actually even going on them. And of course, we've all maybe been in those situations where I'm in the middle of enjoying a great experience, but I'm always thinking ahead to the next thing. And I actually cannot be fully present in the moment. And a speaker I was listening to several months ago illustrated this very poignantly. He said he was on a plane heading to a vacation that he and his wife had dreamed of for quite a bit of time. And as they were leaving, they weren't even at their destination, they were leaving, he's already thinking ahead to the next vacation that they could plan. It's this unfulfilled pleasure. And our world is full of this view of time. And I think maybe it's impacted us at some level too. It's always the next new thing, the next vehicle, the next house, the next experience. Maybe even as small as the next coffee. That's the humanist view. A fatalistic view emphasizes that all events in time have been predetermined, whether by fate or by a deity. There's no human agency in the world to direct the events of our experience. So what this does, it gives a person a very cynical view of life in the world. Everything's been pre-planned, but you just need to accept it. The present is all you have, and the past and the future are the same. They're predetermined and unavoidable. Got to hunker down and endure, which is a very dour view of life. It can almost make this idea of time feeling kind of cyclical, like it just runs in a cycle. And if you go back to Ecclesiastes 3, you kind of get this picture in verses 1 to 8. So prior to this, the author or the preacher has been lamenting the human experience in the first 2 chapters. Everything is vanity. And he continues this in chapter 3, and he lists all these times that just feel like they're unavoidable. They're pre-programmed. There's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to be happy, a time to hug, a time not to hug, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to plant, a time to dig up what you just planted, a time to tear, a time to sew together, a time to destroy, a time to build up, a time to kill and damage, and a time to heal. All these kind of binary options that we have, either one or the two, can seem like these cycles. And when we get to the end of this, these 8 verses in Ecclesiastes 3, to verses 9 and 10, the preacher asks the question that all of us are thinking. He says, "What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth?" What's the point if it's just a cycle? What's the profit of laboring on earth? And if you look at verse 10, you could almost read that as it's as if God actually gives humans hard things just to see them exercise in it, just to see them work. Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor and also a Stoic philosopher back in 161 AD, he said this: "Time is a river, a violent current of events, glimpsed once and already carried past us, and another follows and is gone. As if there's nothing we can do about it. Whatever the current brings, it'll bring it and it'll go on by." That's a fatalist view of time. And if we go on to a capitalist view of time, capitalism views time as a commodity, something to be monetized and utilized for the benefit of myself and the bottom dollar. What we should do in the present should bring us happiness, but we also need to be efficient. wasting time is one of the greatest sins in a Western capitalist mindset. We shave off time as we drive. We buy new time-saving devices. We're efficient in every task that we can be in. Time is a tool that must be harnessed for the best economic output. And so you end up with a human who is busy saving time. Actually, hectic might be a better word. And the time that is saved is used to save more time. And I think we could look back at the Industrial Revolution and kind of modernization that have definitely impacted and fed these ideas when it comes to manufacturing and to machines. And I would say today, one of the greatest factors in kind of the globalization of the world is the saving of time or being efficient. Because efficiency and saving time are tied directly to the bottom dollar. This is the motivation for finding the cheapest and the fastest way to do something. It's what runs our capitalist corporations and businesses. Efficiency is king. And don't hear me saying that I don't enjoy benefits of saving time. You know, the online shopping, Amazon, that left lane on 81, or the drive-through windows. Those are all great. But I would suggest that efficiency and time saving in the name of progress has actually probably hurt the church more than benefited it. Maybe we're looking for more efficient ways to do relationships, or more efficient ways to follow Jesus, or to be a member of a church. It's that quick fix solution. And the problem is that you can't do any of these things efficiently. Relationships are not efficient. They take time, and lots of it. So that's the capitalist view of time. Jewish view of time is unique in that there's a variety of opinions about this, but generally speaking, Jewish time looks at time as not a linear progression from past to future, but as almost three separate dramatic acts. It's a three-part drama that you could look at in the story of the Israelites. It's the deliverance, the exile, the restoration. And you can see that kind of drama played out across the Bible in various small degrees or the large arc of the Bible. You think about Israel from Egypt. That's the deliverance. They were in exile in Babylon, and then they had the Messiah show up. That's the restoration. Or you can think about humankind in the Garden of Eden. That's the deliverance, the exile from the presence of God, and then the restoration to God through Jesus. And even our own experience, right? We've lived in exile, we've been delivered, and we look forward to the future restoration as well as the current restoration that's happening. That's the lens you could view time as a Jew. And in a way, you could also make that kind of as a cycle in nature. Jewish calendar has lots of feasts that are kind of cyclical throughout the year. So there's multiple ones. And as you participate in a feast in the present, you're looking back at what this feast represented in the past, and you're also looking forward to what this feast represents in the future. On a smaller scale, the Jews observe Shabbat, which is the Sabbath. That's how they start their week. And it literally is a day what it means to stop or to cease. It's a day of rest to reset the cycle of a week or the time of a week. And even more, you could say smaller, a degree, is the Jewish day begins at nightfall rather than our Western view of midnight. So, in a sense, the beginning of a day at night is directly linked back to the creation, when God took darkness or maybe chaos that was without form and shaped it into a day with order and purpose, just like the sun rises every morning to reorder the night. It's this pattern or this cycle of time. And I know that's a lot to digest. We haven't done justice to these views, but I want us to think now about how a follower of Jesus should think about time. And I think there's probably elements of the way we think about time that are connected to all of the previous views. We've tended to think of time as a tool to be used and something that needs to be stewarded and used wisely. But I wonder if we just stop there, whether our view of time is actually a bit limited. For the believer, our recorded history begins at the creation story. And we know this story well. God creates order out of chaos, beauty out of darkness, and he places humankind at the center of his creation as the epitome of his creation. And they're in perfect relationship with him. But through the deception of Satan, Adam and Eve choose to move away from that perfection, and they're cut off from being in the presence of God. And the fallout of the fall is felt throughout all creation, down to the very ground we walk on, and the very intimate act of giving birth. Creation groans under the curse. And this brokenness is palpable even in the air we breathe. And so I think it makes sense to say that time also feels the weight of the fall. We've become mortals who have a definitive beginning and a definitive ending. Our life on earth is a direction with a chaotic entrance from a womb of darkness into light at birth, and then a chaotic exit from light into darkness at death. Life and death bookend our direction from the past through the present to the future. And so our existence on earth is heading only one direction, towards our final breath, at an ever-increasing pace. All of our life leads to that moment when we return to dust, the humus that humans originally came from. So how should a follower of Jesus think about their existence on earth, their time on earth, with all its brokenness and pain? Do we just seek relief from the pain? Do we pursue pleasure? Do we monetize our time? Do we squeeze out every drop of worth from every moment? Do we just put our head down and carry on? For the believer, with our time being tarnished by the fall, we can't forget the God who is beyond and above all time, like we said at the beginning. And I'd like to go to Galatians 4, where Paul writes this. In verses 3 to 7, Paul says this: "Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage," this is kind of fall language, "under the elements of the world." Verse 4, "But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law as a human, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Wherefore, thou art no more a servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ." Look at the incredible promises. There's restoration of relationship in the fullness of time. We call Father Abba or Papa or Daddy. We're an heir of God. And an heir, we know, receives the inheritance from Dad. That's God himself. That's the restoration of relationship in the Garden of Eden. And that's a current reality in the present time. God has inserted himself into our time, into that direction that was simply heading to death. He gave us his Son, who inserted himself into our time and has redeemed and bought back time for us. It's no longer a direction of life with a bookend of death. It's no longer a pointless slog to the grave, but it's a story of redemption. And that's how we should view our time, as a story of redemption, as a gift of redemption. The passage of time here on earth takes us closer to the kingdom. And we humans, we tend to make meaning out of life by connecting our small stories here on earth to something greater. This is precisely why humanism doesn't satisfy, because the objective point of reality is myself. There's no transcendent story. That's why fatalism is flawed. There is a transcendent story. There is a pre-planned story. There's a deity, but there's no connection to my story. They just do whatever they want. And that's precisely why capitalism isn't fulfilling, because there is no story. It's just about efficiency and the bottom dollar. So our time, viewing our time as part of God's greater story, is the only way we can make meaning and connection with our past, our present, and our future. We can make meaningful connection with a transcendent story that involves the Son of God bending time and building relationship with his creation. It's the rewriting story of creation, and it's the most compelling story ever told. Time, for the Christian, is the medium through which God works and redeems his kingdom and creation. And these are all great ideas, and it's kind of pie in the sky, but we all know that tomorrow we're going to turn one day older. And that in a year from now, certain joints will hurt more than they did today. And that in a year from now, some of us might face that final breath. We know that our time on earth is still a march toward the end, even though we have these promises of redemption. So, how should we live? And more specifically, how can we bring redemption to and through our time on earth? And that brings us to our final and third point, redeeming the time. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians 5, we're going to read two verses in 15 and 16. These are familiar verses. Paul writes this of chapter 5, verse 15. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. And in a similar verse over in Colossians 4, verse 5, he writes this. Colossians 4:5, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. So both of these passages have this phrase, redeeming the time. And both of these passages, prior to this phrase, have suggest a need for walking in wisdom. That there's this necessity of wisdom before we can just redeem time. So it's not just this casual walk in the park idea or this haphazard approach to time. It calls for some deep consideration and thought. Let's talk about redemption. What is this redemption? And the Hebrew word for redemption is geulah, which has the idea of repayment or being bought back based on relationship and at a cost. And the Greek words have the same idea. Redemption was never free for the Hebrew, in the Hebrew mind. Whether that was buying back land or marrying a widow or ensuring that your near relative is taken care of. It was never free. It was often used in the context of transaction where the cost was absorbed by the Redeemer. The Redeemer is the one who paid. And we have that classic story of Boaz and Ruth. Boaz redeemed Ruth and Naomi at a great cost to himself. Why? Because he was related to them. There was relationship, that familial connection. And God has done the same thing to us through Jesus. And we are now called to be partners with God in his redemptive process here on earth in real time by redeeming the time. So how do we do this? How do we reclaim and buy back our time from the curse? We live what has been coined as the already not yet. The fact that we live in redemption, but we're waiting for the final redemption. That we live in a reordered Eden, but we're looking ahead to the final Eden. The fact that we live in the tension of brokenness from the fall while we anticipate the final restoration. When we partner with God in his redemptive work on earth, we are redeeming the time. I'm going to suggest that this goes beyond just thinking about time as a resource or something to steward, although this is true. I would suggest that's a limited view, because when something is just a resource, It reduces that thing to something that can be wasted or unused without, too much impact or repercussions. It's just a resource. But our time on earth is anything but that. It really does make a difference how I use my time in the earthly and heavenly realities. I think it's more accurate to think of time as a gift, as a redemption gift, and as a story within a larger story. And that's where I'd like to land back in Ecclesiastes 3 here at the end. Ecclesiastes 3, we ended earlier in this chapter in verse 10 by lamenting this kind of fatalistic nature, verses 1 to 10. But I think we've missed the most important part in verses 11 to 14. Look at what the preacher says. He says, he hath made everything beautiful in his time. Speaks of a larger story. Also, he has set the world or eternity in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. I'm going to suggest that these 4 verses offer 4 things that are key to partnering with God in the redemption of time. Verse 11, number 1, is revel in beauty. He has made everything beautiful in his time. And he has set the world or eternity in their hearts. I think they're connected. True beauty is timeless. And it creates within a person this ache that points them to the eternal, to the God-shaped whole that is within each person. It's this mystery that we will not completely understand until our time on earth is finished. We only catch glimpses of this transcendent beauty here on earth, and that points to something beyond our time on earth. It's that cycle of time when the new garden in the new Eden becomes fulfilled. And so revel in the transcendent beauty around you. Maybe be less worried about being efficient or always saving time. Be more worried about seeing beauty. And often this beauty is obscured by the ordinary. A lot of our lives aren't made up of these grandiose sunsets and sunrises all the time. But sometimes it's the grubby face of a child who needs a hug, or the tired face of our coworker who would like a free coffee. And these are precisely the moments that we're called to revel in true beauty and to see the eternal in those moments. It's the beauty that pushes back the curse. If you need a good book to read that's connected to this, Sarah Clarkson has a book, This Beautiful Truth, kind of her story of dealing with mental illness and how beauty kind of helped her kind of recapture some of her love for God. So that's revel in beauty. Verse 12, rejoice and do good. I don't need to tell you this, but joyful people are the happiest people to be around. They're easier to get along with. And there's various research done on human happiness and which cultures are more happy. I think Scandinavian cultures tend to be happiest. And it shows that Americans' happiness has actually declined in the last 10 to 12 years for whatever reason. But I would suggest that we choose joy over this kind of cynical, fatalistic view that says it's just full of hard knocks. So reveling in beauty and choosing joy are connected. And the second half of verse 12, do good, I think simply means to connect us back to our calling from Eden. Like we take time to cultivate good things. We do meaningful work. We create order out of chaos. We tend the people and spheres of life that we're responsible for. All of our lives should consist of bringing goodness, truth, and beauty, these slices of transcendent beauty, to a fallen world. Verse 13, the third one, is enjoy the good of your labor. Sit down to a really good strawberry pie. And there's actually an element almost of what could seem humanistic in that, where we enjoy the present and revel in the good things. But I think the key difference in pursuing pleasure or enjoying the good of your labor, as the preacher says here, is the final phrase of verse 13. It is a gift of God. It's not ours because we earned it or somehow deserve this. It's a gift straight from the hand of God, and we enjoy it because it is that. And the fourth one in verse 14 is fear God. This verse simply highlights that God is in control. He's working out his purposes in time, in the world, and there's an element to where humans can't stop him. We don't control the world. We partner with God, but we don't control it. And that's comforting because this isn't just some distant deity who, pre-programmed the universe and time and then stepped back and watched it happen at a distance. But this God, this deity, has actually entered his own universe in time. And that's why we fear and reverence God. We trust his goodness and his purposes in the world in time. So these four things, I would suggest, are ways that we can redeem the time. We revel in beauty, we rejoice and do good, we enjoy the good of our labor, and we fear God. I think for us today, it's easy to be shaped by various views of time, whether that's living for the present, or enduring the present and kind of disengaging from the future, or by hoarding and monetizing our time. All these views have probably influenced us at some level. And so I would encourage us to think about our time, this gift of time here on earth, as part of a larger transcendent story of what God is doing in the world. That gives it meaning and purpose and allows us to partner with God in redeeming the time. And when we revel in beauty, when we rejoice and do good, when we enjoy the good of our labor and fear God throughout our lives on earth, it's as if time does slow down in the present rather than speeding up towards death. It's then that we begin to catch glimpses of the infinite in our finiteness. That's when eternity deepens its residence in our hearts. And so, perhaps my mom was right more than she realized. I don't have time. I simply have the gift of time. Let's kneel for prayer. Father, we're finite beings in time. We have the past, our present circumstances, and our future hope. Help us to be thoughtful about how we can continue to redeem time here on earth. And we recognize that our tendency is to think about our lives in terms of achievements and the things we accomplish on earth before our time runs out. But you call us to live in ways that bring eternity to the present, that point forward to a greater day and a future when the redemption of time and ourselves and all creation will be complete. Thank you, Father, that you've begun that good work here on earth through Jesus already, and that you've asked us to participate and become partners with you in that good work. Help us. Help us to find beauty, to choose joy and do good, to enjoy your free gifts, and ultimately to fear and trust and hope in you. Thank you that we have these moments here on earth. Help us to steward them well and to continue to work at redeeming time. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.